Have you ever wondered why, no matter how hard you try, certain areas of your life just don't change? Why, even after all the effort, the same challenges seem to reappear in your relationships, your finances, or your health? What if the true reason isn't out there, but within you? What if the secret to transforming your outer world lies entirely in mastering your inner one? We live in a world obsessed with external solutions, more effort, better strategies, faster results. But there's an ancient truth, simple yet profound, that's been echoed through spiritual teachings for centuries. Your reality is nothing more than a reflection of your most dominant thoughts. Not your desires, not your words alone, but the images and feelings you consistently hold within. Like a mirror, life only reflects back what you silently believe to be true. You might say, "But I've always believed in better days," or "I've tried to be positive." Yet if deep inside, what you really nurture is fear, doubt, or unworthiness, the law remains faithful and delivers according to the strongest mental image. This is not a matter of superstition or magical thinking. It's a mental law, as consistent as gravity. You don't need to believe in it for it to work. It simply does. And you're using it every single day, whether you're aware of it or not. Has this ever happened to you? You wake up, and the first thing that crosses your mind is something that went wrong. A conversation, a disappointment, a fear. Without realizing it, your entire day begins to vibrate with that energy. Everything you see, every situation you walk into, starts to match that initial thought pattern. And by evening you say, "I knew this would happen." But what you didn't know is that you helped create it. Thought shapes reality. This isn't poetic philosophy. It's spiritual physics. Your inner world is the blueprint, and every result, every repeated outcome, is nothing more than evidence of what you've been holding on the screen of your mind. The key is not to work harder, but to think clearer, and to feel in harmony with what you desire, not with what you fear. What you're about to discover might surprise you. It's not about trying to force change or control every thought. It's about understanding how this law of mental cause and effect actually operates, how your inner picture determines the shape of your outer life. And once you get this, truly get it, you'll realize you've had the power all along. So, stay with me until the end, because we're just beginning to explore a truth that has the potential to shift everything, not in some distant future, but starting now. The transformation doesn't begin when circumstances improve. It begins the moment you decide to change the image within. And in just a few moments, we'll take our first steps into that invisible world, the one that governs all others. But first, take a breath, settle in, and prepare to see your life from a perspective you may never have considered before. We've been taught to believe that the most powerful forces in life are external: money, timing, the decisions of others, even fate. But what if one of the most transformative forces has been inside you this entire time, quietly shaping your reality from the shadows? It's not mystical. It's not religious dogma. It's something much more universal and accessible, a kind of practical spirituality, as reliable as flipping a switch and watching the light come on. This isn't about believing in abstract ideals or memorizing spiritual quotes. It's about understanding how certain inner laws, mental, emotional, energetic, respond to us just like physical ones. No one questions gravity. You don't need to believe in it for it to keep your feet on the ground. In the same way, there are invisible laws that govern how our thoughts, emotions, and words crystallize into the experiences we live. And once you see how precise these laws are, it becomes impossible to ignore their impact. Think of it like electricity. You don't have to worship it. You just have to respect it and learn how to use it. You flip the switch, and the current responds, not because you're special, but because that's how the system was designed. These spiritual laws work the same way. They're not controlled by luck, deservingness, or moral status. They simply answer to clarity, consistency, and alignment. That's what makes this path so empowering. You don't need permission from the world to begin changing it. And this is where something shifts. The moment you stop seeing spirituality as an abstract concept and begin living it as a daily, practical art, not in temples or under stained glass, but right in your kitchen, in traffic, in the way you respond to bad news, or carry yourself into a room. The sacred isn't separate from the ordinary. It's behind the scenes, beneath every thought, waiting to be activated by your awareness. What makes this even more powerful is what I like to call the triple formula. It's a simple yet profound structure. It begins with a spiritual principle, something timeless, usually expressed in scripture or wisdom texts. Then comes the method, a concrete, repeatable practice that grounds that principle in your day-to-day life. And finally, the proof, a real-life result, a shift, a healing, a reconciliation that shows the law in motion. Principle, practice, proof. That's the structure that turns theory into transformation. You'll see how someone took a biblical phrase, like, ask and it shall be given, and instead of repeating it mindlessly, they treated it like a code, a blueprint. They built a clear image in their mind, they infused it with emotion, and they let it flow out through aligned action. And the universe, like a perfectly tuned machine, responded not to the words, but to the clarity and conviction behind them. There's nothing passive about this path. It's not about waiting for signs or hoping the universe gives you a break. It's about stepping into creative responsibility. Becoming the kind of person who doesn't just wish for change, but thinks in alignment with it, feels it as real, and lives like it's already unfolding. That's not manifesting. That's coherence. It's power disguised as simplicity. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, into how the moment you match a thought with a feeling, you set an entire chain of reality into motion, whether you're aware of it or not. Put down in the comments, "This makes sense to me." Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you grasp how creation truly unfolds, something clicks inside you. It's not a metaphor, not a philosophy, but a structure as real as the blueprint of a house or the roots of a tree. Everything you experience begins the same way, with a seed, a thought, a mental image, a silent decision you may not even realize you've made. That's the starting point. But like any seed, it can't grow on its own. It needs something vital to activate it. Emotion. Emotion is the heat that awakens the seed. It's the spark that turns a casual idea into a living force. You can think 100 thoughts a day, but only the ones you feel deeply, with passion, with certainty, even with fear, take root in your subconscious. That's the hidden truth most people miss. It's not the number of times you repeat something, it's the energy behind it. The law responds not to what you say you want, but to what you emotionally affirm to be real. This is where many people get stuck. They plant one kind of seed in the morning, hope, intention, a mental picture of success, and spend the rest of the day watering it with fear, doubt, or frustration. And then they wonder why things don't bloom. But the law is precise. It doesn't judge. It doesn't ask whether you meant well. It simply fulfills the strongest order you've placed. And if your thoughts and feelings are pulling in opposite directions, the energy cancels out. Like trying to sail with two winds in opposite directions, you go nowhere. It's not punishment, it's precision. That's what makes this practice so powerful once you understand it. You don't need to beg for a better reality. You don't have to force the world to change. You only need to get your inner world in sync. Thought plus emotion equals momentum. That's the creative formula. And the more you live in that alignment, the faster things begin to shift. Sometimes so quietly it feels like magic, but it's really just you working with the system instead of against it. Think about your own mindset for a moment. What kind of thoughts are you holding on to beneath the surface? What emotions are fueling those thoughts? Are you carrying the energy of peace, confidence, gratitude, or are you unknowingly charged with resistance, worry, and tension? The answer isn't meant to make you feel guilty. It's meant to make you aware. Because awareness is the turning point. It's how you stop being a passenger and become the one steering. And the beautiful part is, you don't have to do it perfectly. This isn't about becoming some flawless spiritual master. It's about choosing your alignment again and again, like tuning an instrument. Each time you bring your thought and your emotion back into harmony, you strengthen the signal. You send a clearer message, and the law, like a mirror, begins to reflect it back in form, in timing, in opportunities, in the kinds of people and situations that appear on your path. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, into how a single focused image, when held with emotional consistency, can reshape the entire landscape of your life. Put down in the comments, "I'm also on this path. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic." Because once you understand how silence, focus, and imagination can work together, the game changes. You stop trying to control everything on the outside and begin shifting the only thing that ever truly matters, your inner image. And it doesn't take years of practice or hours of meditation. It takes intention, and above all, consistency. Picture this: a mother, exhausted and heartbroken over her son's rebellious behavior, had tried everything. Lectures, punishments, even pleading. Nothing worked, until she stopped reacting and started seeing. Not with her physical eyes, but with her mind's eye. 3 times a day, for just a few minutes, she imagined her son calm, joyful, and respectful. She infused that image with love, not fear, not desperation, but warmth, presence, and certainty. And she refused to speak of his past behavior, even when asked, "What happened?" Within a few days, the boy began to change. Not because someone forced him to, but because someone held a new pattern for him so clearly that reality had no choice but to catch up. This is the hidden truth most people overlook, that the invisible world of thought and emotion is what carves the visible one. But here's the catch: it only works when you stop contradicting yourself. It's like sending out a signal and then immediately jamming it with interference. You can't affirm peace and then retell the story of conflict. You can't visualize abundance and then complain about bills. The law is loyal. It listens to what you mean, not what you say. That's why choosing one focus is so powerful. One issue, one image, one emotional charge. You're not trying to fix your entire life in a day. You're selecting one door and turning the key with absolute clarity. Maybe it's your health, so you close your eyes and see your body radiant, energized, whole. Or maybe it's your finances, and you picture transactions flowing, your bank balance rising, your shoulders dropping in relief. Or maybe it's love, and you see harmony, softness, genuine connection. Whatever it is, you hold that image steady for 1 minute, not while checking your phone, not while mentally listing your doubts, but fully present, like watering a seed with all your attention. And when the old fear returns, as it probably will, you don't panic. You return, you repeat, you realign. Because repetition is not just about habit, it's how you saturate your subconscious. That's the behind-the-scenes mechanism. The more often you return to the image with genuine feeling, the deeper it sinks. And once it's planted deep enough, it begins to move without your effort, like a compass realigning on its own. There's something liberating in knowing you don't have to change people or force outcomes. You just need to be unwavering in the vision you choose to carry. That vision becomes your offering to the law, and the law, always faithful, begins shaping circumstances to match it. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, into how a single mental image, held with emotional truth, becomes the silent command that reality must obey. Put down in the comments, "I see it clearly." Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you start to pay attention to the quiet choices happening in your own mind, you begin to see just how much of your life has been running on autopilot, not because you're lazy or undisciplined, but because no one ever taught you how sacred a single thought can be. And yet, every moment, you're letting something in, a belief, an idea, a picture. Most of the time it happens without permission. The past sneaks in. The news imposes itself, someone else's energy rubs off. But here's the shift. You can begin guarding the door, not with fear, not with rigidity, but with awareness. That question, "What thought am I allowing in right now?" has the power to transform your entire day. It pulls you out of reaction and back into creation. Because life isn't happening to you as randomly as you may think. Life is reflecting what you're hosting. And if you're not curating what enters your mind, chances are, the default setting is doing it for you. Old programming, cultural noise, unquestioned fears. But once you become the gatekeeper of your inner world, the outer world starts to take a new shape. You'll notice the pattern. A worry gets in, and suddenly your body tightens. A memory flashes by, and your mood drops without warning. But when you intercept the thought and decide, truly decide, not to give it room, something extraordinary happens. You stop feeding what weakens you, and in that space, a new power begins to emerge. Not forced, not loud, just a quiet strength that knows it doesn't have to fight, it just has to align. This is the revelation most people miss. The law you're working with doesn't care about your background, your titles, your history. It's not interested in your age, your gender, your culture, or what anyone thinks of you. It doesn't operate on favoritism. It responds to frequency, to vibration, to your inner climate. That's why two people in the exact same situation can experience completely different outcomes, because one guards their thoughts and the other lets them run wild. This isn't about toxic positivity. It's not about pretending nothing's wrong. It's about reclaiming the power to choose which thought gets to stay, which emotion gets watered, which vision gets your attention. And that decision, made quietly, consistently, becomes the thread that weaves your new reality. So ask yourself throughout the day, not in judgment, but in curiosity, is this thought building something I want to live in? Because every thought you allow in is laying bricks, and eventually you'll be standing inside the house your mind has built. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, into how subtle inner shifts create undeniable changes in what shows up around you, and how becoming mentally clear is the most powerful decision you'll ever make. Write in the comments, I'm choosing my thoughts. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because there's something powerful, almost hidden in plain sight, about the way your mind interacts with what you call reality. It's not just that your thoughts influence your experience, it's that your vision sets the limits of what's possible for you. Not vision in the sense of eyesight, but that deeper inner image you hold, sometimes without even realizing it. What you see inside is what you end up walking toward, and according to a universal principle that appears across sacred texts and ancient wisdom, all the land that you see, I will give to you. That line isn't just poetic, it's mechanical, it's law. You only receive what you're willing to see, clearly, consistently, and emotionally. Not just in your hopeful moments, but in your quiet, habitual ones. That's why the image matters more than the words. You can affirm abundance all day, but if your internal movie is filled with scenes of lack, the law won't hear your affirmation. It will respond to your dominant picture. And this is where the real transformation begins, when you stop speaking about what you want and start seeing it, deeply, vividly, like it's already part of you. But here's the catch, and it's where most people get stuck. They don't realize they're playing two films at once, one with the outcome they desire, and another with all the ways it might go wrong. One moment they're visualizing success, and the next, they're bracing for failure. They want healing, but mentally rehearse symptoms. They desire love, but expect rejection. And that back and forth creates what I call double exposure. Imagine trying to print a photograph, but two negatives are laid on top of each other. The result is blurry, distorted, uncertain. That's exactly what happens to your manifestations when you send out mixed signals. The mental law doesn't punish for inconsistency. It just reflects it. And what comes back is exactly what was projected, unclear, delayed, or even contradictory. Not because you're doing it wrong, but because clarity hasn't yet taken root. You can't manifest a strong result from a divided mind. The signal must be clean. The image must be unified. That doesn't mean you'll never have doubts, but it does mean that when they arise, you return to the picture you've chosen. You give it your attention. You water it with emotion. You give it time and space to grow. This isn't about obsessing over every stray thought. It's about anchoring yourself to one internal reality, so that even when the outer world wobbles, your vision stays firm. Because what you continue to see inwardly will eventually overpower what surrounds you externally. The question is, which image are you committed to? So the next time life feels confusing or stuck, don't assume it's because the law isn't working. Ask instead, have I been mixing my images? Have I been sending two messages, hoping for one result? Because once you commit to a single vision, not out of force, but out of alignment, everything else begins to shift around it. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, into how to create a mental image so focused and alive that the outer world has no choice but to mirror it back. Write in the comments, "I choose one vision." Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you grasp how imagination and surrender work together, you start unlocking a level of creative power that feels both gentle and undeniable. It's not about intensity, it's about clarity, and one of the simplest yet most effective ways to work with this law is what many call the mental blackboard technique. Think of it like this: your mind is a canvas, and every image you hold leaves a mark. The clearer and more emotionally charged the image, the deeper the imprint. But here's the subtle art. After imprinting that image, you release it. Close your eyes and picture something specific you want. Not vague, not generalized. A single scene. Maybe it's you receiving good news, or walking confidently into a new opportunity, or seeing a number in your bank account that once felt impossible. Write that scene on the blackboard of your mind. Simply, clearly, without overcomplicating it. Feel the relief, the joy, the confidence. Let it come alive. But then, here's the key. Erase it. Not because you're discarding it, but because you're releasing it. You're letting it go into the law. You've done your part. The vision is delivered. This symbolic act of erasing is not forgetting. It's trusting. It's stepping out of the energy of grasping and into the flow of knowing. You don't need to hold on with tension. You simply need to revisit that image with sincerity when it feels right, and then once again, release it. This is the hidden truth behind so many spiritual teachings. Faith is not passive. It's the confidence that what you have seen within is already in motion. And when this technique becomes a rhythm in your daily life, the results speak for themselves. One powerful story is that of Federico, a small business owner whose shop had been struggling for months. Sales were down. Fear was creeping in. But instead of obsessing over the numbers, he made a quiet decision. Every night before bed, for just 20 minutes, he sat in stillness and saw his shop filled with happy customers. He imagined shelves being restocked, money flowing in, clients smiling as they left. He didn't beg. He didn't push. He just visualized, felt it, and released it. Within a few weeks, things began to shift. Customers returned. Unexpected orders came in. By the end of the month, his sales had doubled, not because of a marketing miracle, but because the atmosphere around his business had changed, beginning in the one place where all transformation starts, the mind. That's the behind-the-scenes power most people never tap into. They try to manipulate results, change people, hustle harder, but the real impact comes when you align inwardly first, when you commit to a vision with emotional clarity, and then release it with calm expectancy. It's a balance of intention and surrender, of inner action and quiet trust. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, into how repetition with relaxed emotion becomes the invisible architect of the life you're meant to live. Put down in the comments, "I see it, I release it." Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because this is where we begin to shape thought into reality with precision, almost like an artist with a brush or a sculptor with clay. And the secret? It's not complexity, it's refinement. Most people think they need to build something elaborate in their minds for it to work. But the opposite is true. Simplicity is power. The clearer the mental image, the faster the law responds. If your vision is foggy or overloaded, the results reflect that same confusion. But when it's sharp, when it moves, when it breathes, when it feels alive, something begins to shift behind the scenes. Movement in your mental picture isn't just decorative. It signals that the image is active, unfolding, becoming. Think of someone shaking your hand, opening a door, laughing with you. These aren't random animations. They create momentum. They convince your subconscious that what you're imagining isn't fantasy. It's happening. That's the transformation. That's how you start to live in the reality before it arrives. And with each repetition of that scene, always infused with emotion, not just words, you're embedding a new blueprint into the foundation of your life. But there's another layer that most people overlook: completion. The mind responds powerfully to a story that ends with resolution. Don't just imagine the beginning of the blessing. See yourself receiving it, signing the contract, hearing the yes, feeling the healing. Completion creates a sense of finality, of arrival. It tells your subconscious that this isn't a desire, it's a done deal. And when you revisit that image, even if only for a minute or two a day, you're feeding it with certainty, not longing. That's the shift that changes everything. Still, none of this matters without the emotional charge. Emotion is the heat of creation. It's what makes the seed break open. Cold affirmations, the kind you repeat without feeling, just to check off a box, have no weight. They're like shouting into the wind. But a single moment of true emotion, even if silent, sends a deeper message than 100 hollow declarations. That's because emotion bypasses logic. It speaks the language of the subconscious, which is the true architect behind all your outcomes. So ask yourself, the next time you visualize something, do I feel this? Not in the future. Not someday. Now, can you stir up the emotion as if it's already yours? That's what gives it life. That's what accelerates the manifestation. And it doesn't have to be dramatic. Even a quiet inner knowing, a sense of calm confidence, is enough to fuel the image. Because creation isn't about effort, it's about alignment. And this is the journey. Not just to create a new reality, but to become the kind of person who naturally expects it, whose inner world is so ordered, so aligned, that the outer world has no choice but to catch up. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, into how emotional congruence and repetition form the spiritual architecture of everything we call real. Write in the comments, I feel it already. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because there's something profoundly simple, yet often overlooked, about how breath bridges the invisible and the visible. Most people think of breath as merely physical, something your body does automatically. But when used with awareness, breath becomes a vehicle, a direct path to transformation. Not by forcing change, but by making space for it. And that's exactly what the Breathe Certainty exercise is designed to do. You take just 30 seconds, not hours, not a whole morning, just a sacred half-minute, to step out of the noise and return to the center of your being. You begin by breathing in, slowly, gently, not just oxygen, but the idea of divine life moving through you. You visualize the outcome you desire as if it's already unfolding, right now. Not someday, not eventually, but now, alive in your mind, vibrant in your feeling. And then, on the exhale, you release, not just air. You let go of resistance. You breathe out doubt, tension, mental clutter. It doesn't need to be dramatic. It only needs to be honest. This is the hidden truth that no one teaches us, that certainty isn't a gift you wait for. It's something you practice, moment by moment, breath by breath. And what you're doing in that short exercise is resetting the inner climate. You're choosing the atmosphere you want your thoughts to grow in. And when that atmosphere is infused with peace, with gratitude, with quiet confidence, the seeds you've planted begin to respond. One of the most striking examples of this came from Anita, someone who had been suffering from relentless migraines for over 4 years. She had tried every path available to her, medication, treatments, even alternative therapies, but nothing seemed to create lasting relief, until she stumbled upon a practice that didn't ask her to fight the pain. It asked her to breathe through it. For 7 days she committed to this one act, breathing in divine life, feeling the gratitude as if the healing was already complete, and breathing out every fear that said otherwise. And by the end of that week, something remarkable happened. The pain stopped. Not temporarily, not for a moment. It ended. Not because of willpower or some external fix, but because she aligned herself with an inner frequency that no longer supported the illness. Her body responded to the new message it was receiving. And that message was certainty, calm, healing. This is the impact of emotional alignment paired with breath. It softens the resistance that keeps your good out of reach. It allows the law to do what it was designed to do. Reflect your most consistent state, not your loudest hope, not your strongest wish, but the tone you carry when you're not even trying. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, into how sustained inner agreement becomes the doorway through which divine manifestation enters your life. Write in the comments, I breathe certainty. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because there's a turning point in every journey where thinking and hoping are no longer enough. You realize that logic has taken you as far as it can, and the only thing left is feeling. Not just emotion for the sake of it, but a specific kind of inner agreement, one that says, it's already done. That's when you begin to move differently. Not because something external changed, but because you changed first. You shifted from longing into embodiment, and this begins with a single question. What would I feel if this were already true? Not tomorrow, not someday, but right now. If that door opened, if the healing came, if the person showed up, if the breakthrough landed in your hands, what would move through your body? Relief, peace, that subtle thrill in your chest that makes you breathe a little deeper, stand a little taller? That's the frequency you're after. Not the image itself, but the emotion behind it. That emotion is your evidence. That's your confirmation. And when you can touch it, even briefly, your entire energetic field starts to align with that new timeline. You don't need to force that feeling or hype yourself up. This isn't about artificial enthusiasm. True faith isn't loud. It's steady. It's that quiet inner fire that doesn't flicker, even when life gets windy. It's warm, not wild. Grounded, not frantic. The kind of faith that speaks to your cells, your nervous system, your very breath, and says, we're already there. This is where most people get it wrong. They think manifestation is about high energy, about shouting, affirmations, or pushing themselves into belief. But the hidden truth is that results come not from hype, but from heat, from the warmth of sincere gratitude, even before the blessing arrives. That gratitude is not about pretending. It's about acknowledging that what you've asked for is on its way, and that the universe is not holding back on you, it's preparing through you. Gratitude is the spark, and once it lights the fire, you don't need to chase. You attract by who you're becoming, by how you're thinking, feeling, and most importantly, being in the quiet moments. The behind-the-scenes transformation is what makes the visible change inevitable. Because emotion isn't just reaction, it's creation. When you learn to feel the answer before it appears, you start collapsing the distance between where you are and what you desire. And this is where the practice becomes alive. It's no longer a ritual. It's no longer a technique. It becomes who you are. You carry that emotion like a frequency, and life begins to echo it back to you, sometimes subtly, sometimes in waves, but always in perfect rhythm with the state you hold within. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, into how emotional calibration rewires your reality from the inside out. Write in the comments, I feel it as real. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the moment something moves from thought to word, it begins to take form in ways most people never notice. It's easy to believe that words are just sounds or habits, but in truth, they are signals. They carry the signature of your belief. Every time you speak, whether aloud or in your mind, you're giving instructions to the law that governs your life. It doesn't wait for a ceremony or a prayer. It responds to the tone and clarity of your inner dialogue. That's why the spoken word is so powerful. It seals the image you've been building. It's the final stroke in the act of creation. You've visualized, you've felt, you've believed, and then you speak it. That's when the invisible begins to solidify. Your word is not just expression, it's declaration. It's a confirmation to the universe that you're no longer hoping, you're receiving. But here's the hidden truth. The law doesn't just respond to your affirmations or declarations of faith, it responds to everything you say with emotion. Even, and especially, the words you think don't matter. A passing comment, a joke, a complaint you've told 1,000 times. Because it's just how things are. These words carry weight. They're not neutral. When you say, money never lasts, even in jest, you're reinforcing scarcity. When you say, my nerves are shot, your body listens. Your life listens. These phrases sneak past your awareness and create ripples that you only notice once they return to you in circumstances, in patterns, in outcomes. So it's not about being perfect with language. It's about becoming intentional, not robotic, not rigid, but awake. You start to catch yourself mid-sentence, mid-thought, and ask, is this something I want to become real? that single moment of pause, that tiny act of self-awareness, is where transformation begins. Because once you realize that every word is a brushstroke on the canvas of your reality, you speak with more care, more reverence. And that's when your language starts to align with the life you're actually trying to build. This is what most people never see, that their spiritual practice isn't just about what they do in meditation or journaling. It's about how they speak in traffic, in small talk, when no one is watching. That's the behind-the-scenes energy that forms the foundation of your results. And when you start sealing your inner vision with words that match it, not contradict it, you stop delaying your manifestations. You begin to accelerate them. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, into how the smallest patterns in our speech reveal the deepest agreements in our consciousness. Write in the comments, "My words are aligned." Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because nothing exposes the gap between belief and reality faster than our everyday words. The things we say without even thinking, the offhand remarks, the casual observations, the phrases we've inherited from others and repeated so many times, they've become part of our inner soundtrack. And that's exactly where so much of our transformation hides. Not in big declarations, but in the subtle shifts in how we speak about life, possibility, and ourselves. Take Arturo, for example, a man whose job depended on knocking doors and making sales, even in the coldest months of the year. Every morning he'd lace up his boots and repeat the same sentence to his co-workers, half joking, half resigned. "No one opens their doors in this weather." And day after day, that became his truth. Closed doors, cold shoulders, missed opportunities. Not because people weren't home or uninterested, but because his words had already written the script for how the day would unfold. His language carried an invisible permission slip for failure. Until something clicked. He didn't change his job. He didn't overhaul his strategy. He changed a sentence. He started walking into the day saying, "Today, doors open with ease." Not as a motivational chant, not as a desperate hope, just as a quiet shift in agreement. A new pattern introduced into the atmosphere, and over the next few weeks, commissions started to rise, then double, then triple. It wasn't magic, it was alignment. The internal narrative began supporting the external result, and the result adjusted accordingly. That's the hidden mechanism we're working with. Words aren't just descriptions, they're activations, especially when they're emotionally charged. And that's why short, precise power phrases carry such deep impact, because they bypass doubt and speak directly to the heart of your belief. Phrases like, "God opens the way," or "Everything good is flowing to me now," may seem small, but they're actually seismic in effect, especially when spoken with sincerity, not performance. The secret isn't in how loud or perfect the phrase is. It's in the agreement behind it. When your heart leans into those words, even slightly, they start cutting new grooves in your consciousness. They create new pathways for thought to travel, and eventually, for life to follow. You begin to feel differently, decide differently, respond differently. The shift may be subtle at first, but it's real, and it grows. That's the journey of inner mastery, noticing where your speech reveals what you've been tolerating, and then rewriting it in a way that honors where you're going. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, into how these small declarations begin to rewire not just your results, but your sense of identity at the core. Write in the comments, "My words create my world." Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because there's a misconception that power lies in how much you say. That transformation requires volume, repetition, or long sessions of affirmations. But the truth is, a single phrase, spoken from the right place within you, can carry more weight than hours of empty declarations. It's not the length of your words that moves the needle. It's the fire behind them. One aligned sentence, spoken with inner certainty, can shift the atmosphere of an entire day. One word, ignited by belief, can open doors that logic couldn't even knock on. Consistency isn't about effort. It's about agreement. What do you return to, again and again, even in silence? Because whatever lives in that internal loop becomes the foundation of your experience. That's why so many people work hard on the outside, but remain stuck. They're planting one seed with their intentions, but watering another with their doubts. Real shift begins when the inner dialogue becomes steady, not frantic. When instead of chasing the result, you begin to rest in the reality that the right word, spoken consistently, anchors you in a new identity. And from there, everything begins to respond. That's where the golden key enters. It's not a technique that requires discipline or advanced understanding. It's disarmingly simple, and precisely for that reason, it's often overlooked. When you find yourself in the grip of fear, anxiety, confusion, the instinct is to wrestle with it, to analyze, fix, or push it away. But this approach only feeds it. The law doesn't distinguish between fear and fascination. It responds to attention. So the golden key is this: stop feeding the problem. Turn your attention fully to God, not as a request for escape, but as a complete surrender of mental energy. It sounds passive, but it's anything but. Redirecting your mind away from the issue and toward the presence, even for 30 seconds, severs the link that was energizing the chaos. The problem doesn't vanish magically. It simply loses its power over your perception. And in that quiet shift, answers begin to rise. Peace becomes accessible again. Decisions flow instead of being forced. It's not about pretending nothing is wrong. It's about remembering where true power lives. And when you begin to live from that space, when your go-to move in chaos becomes returning to divine focus instead of panicking, you become unshakable. This is where mindset becomes more than a concept. It becomes a lifestyle of trust, a posture of openness, and a way of moving through life that doesn't rely on outer validation to feel secure. It's the hidden truth behind peace that lasts. It was never about how loud you speak your desire, but how consistently you align your attention with something higher. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, into how this daily inner posture begins shaping not just your emotions, but the actual structure of your reality. Write in the comments, "I'm aligned with higher focus." Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding the golden key in theory is one thing, but embodying it during life's most intense moments is something else entirely. It's easy to believe in spiritual laws when things are calm, but what about when the stakes feel impossibly high? What about when your heart is on the line, when the outcome seems to be slipping through your fingers? That's where the real test happens. Not of your worth, not of your strength, but of your focus. When you use the golden key in those moments, you're not escaping reality. You're recentering it. You're choosing to step out of the turbulence of control and into the clarity of trust. And that shift, that quiet, internal pivot, can change the entire trajectory of a situation. It's not about pretending the problem doesn't exist. It's about denying it the power to control your vibration. It's a spiritual decision to redirect the spotlight, and something powerful happens when you do. Picture this. You're in the middle of a storm. Legal, emotional, financial, relational, and instead of gripping tighter or trying to mentally outmaneuver the chaos, you pause. You drop the problem, just for a moment. You whisper a divine name, one that resonates with you. Maybe peace, maybe God is here, maybe just I am, and then you do nothing else, except let that vibration expand quietly within you. No pleading, no effort, just allowing, just opening, just trusting the invisible current that's always been flowing underneath the noise. That's what Clara did. In the middle of a custody battle that had drained her emotionally and financially, she stopped feeding the narrative. She stopped replaying worst-case scenarios. And every morning, before opening a single email or reading another court document, she practiced the golden key. 90 seconds of silence. 90 seconds of letting the divine take the lead. She didn't tell anyone she was doing it. She didn't announce her shift. But everything around her began to adjust. Arguments softened. Deadlocks opened. And the case was resolved. Not through force or strategy, but through alignment. And maybe that's the hidden truth behind spiritual transformation. You don't win by overpowering life. You win by partnering with something greater. And that partnership begins where fear ends. In the stillness, in the silence, in the sacred moment where you remember you're not alone. That's the real journey. Not one of effort, but of surrender. Not of escape, but of expansion. A path where your energy becomes the signal, and reality listens. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, into how surrender isn't passive at all, but a magnetic force that pulls unseen support directly to your door. Write in the comments, I choose trust over control. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because when we talk about healing, most people instinctively turn outward. They search for answers in diagnoses, treatments, supplements, and schedules. But what if healing, true, lasting, transformative healing, doesn't begin in the body at all? What if the physical condition is just a surface echo of something much quieter happening within? This is where many never think to look, but it's where everything begins to shift. Healing, at its core, is spiritual, not abstract, not poetic, practical, and that's where the hidden truth lives, in the realization that before your cells can realign, your consciousness must. That doesn't mean you ignore the physical. It means you stop giving it the final word, because disease, pain, imbalance, they often begin as subtle disruptions in your inner world, a mental disconnection, an emotional tension you've normalized, a deep belief, often unconscious, that something is broken or unsafe within you. But here's the revelation. Your body listens, and the moment you correct the spiritual blueprint, the physical begins to reorganize around that clarity. This isn't magic. It's law. It's alignment. It's the difference between declaring, I am sick, and quietly affirming, divine order is now established in me. One reinforces the fracture. The other calls in the repair team already waiting behind the scenes. Because when you affirm spiritual truth, when you claim harmony, peace, and perfection as your foundation, you deny the power of discord to linger. You stop feeding it. You stop identifying with it. And in that detachment, your system begins to breathe again. Ernesto understood this. A carpenter by trade, his hands were his livelihood. When an accident crushed one of his fingers, every logical voice around him forecasted surgery, complications, and long recovery. But Ernesto chose a different kind of treatment. He didn't deny what had happened. He denied it authority. Every day, instead of telling the story of damage, he told the story of divine order. He visualized his finger whole, flexible, strong. He wrapped it in bandages, yes, but also in words like light and intention. And what followed stunned even the doctors. His finger healed not just well, but faster than expected, and with full mobility. Was it a miracle, or simply a law few are taught to use? That's the quiet revolution waiting in stories like his. A shift from symptom chasing to soul listening, from fear-driven reaction to spirit-driven intention. And once you grasp that your biology responds to belief, the game changes. You don't wait for permission to feel whole again. You declare it, and reality, step by step, starts to reflect that new command. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, into how your environment and energy fields respond when your inner world anchors itself in divine certainty. Write in the comments, healing begins in me. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because there's a quiet revelation most people never consider. In the divine equation, there is no such thing as big or small. Your mind creates scale. It creates urgency, danger, pressure. But the law that governs healing, creation, and supply makes no such distinction. Chronic illness, sudden pain, long-term debt, or a one-time financial hiccup, they are all treated equally by the invisible intelligence that responds to your belief. This is where transformation begins, when you stop negotiating with appearances and begin rewriting the blueprint from within. We often say, but this condition has lasted 10 years, or this bill is too high, or this wound feels too deep. And the moment we say that, we feed the illusion that divine power measures struggle by duration or magnitude. But truth doesn't recognize levels. It recognizes alignment. Just like turning on a light doesn't care how long the room has been dark. The moment the switch is flipped, illumination comes. And in the same way, the moment your belief stabilizes, your healing begins. No matter how long you've been carrying the issue. That's not wishful thinking. That's alignment with the nature of spiritual law. And when it comes to prosperity, the same hidden truth applies. Most people chase wealth externally, as if it's a destination, a number, a job, a breakthrough. But prosperity is not something you earn. It's something you allow. And what blocks that allowance isn't circumstance, it's image, the one you carry silently, repeatedly, almost unconsciously in the background of your mind. Scarcity doesn't begin in your bank account. It begins in your inner picture of limitation. It's a mindset where there's never enough. Money slips through my fingers. I can't get ahead. These aren't just harmless thoughts. They are instructions. But here's where everything shifts. The moment you choose a different mental image, reality begins to reorganize. Not instantly, but faithfully. When you begin to see yourself supported, valued, open to receive, without guilt or hesitation, then the flow that always existed begins to move in your direction. You don't create abundance, you unblock it, and that's where the real impact begins. Not through force, but through clarity. You realize you were never waiting on a promotion, a client, a miracle. You were only waiting to stop rehearsing the old story. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, into the magnetic power of joyful expectation, and how it unlocks everything already prepared for you. Put down in the comments, I choose a new image. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the most surprising transformations often begin with the simplest acts. That's what makes the envelope exercise so powerful. It may seem ordinary at first glance, writing down a number, sealing it inside paper, and blessing it. But what you're really doing is creating a contract with your inner self, a symbolic agreement that says, I'm done entertaining the idea of lack. You are no longer begging the world for supply. You are agreeing with it. Daily gratitude becomes your signature. And that's where the shift begins, not in your wallet, but in your awareness. Every time you hold that envelope and feel sincere appreciation, as if the goal were already fulfilled, you're sending a message far more potent than logic or strategy ever could. You're saying, I see it, I trust it, I already feel the outcome, and this feeling, this silent knowing, is what impresses the subconscious. You're not forcing results, you're dissolving resistance. You begin to recognize that spiritual law responds, not to desperation, but to congruence, when your emotions, intentions, and imagination all speak the same language. That's exactly what Matilda did. A seamstress with very little income and a mountain of debt, she could have easily surrendered to fear. But instead she chose to bless what she had. She took on the practice not with obsession, but with quiet consistency. Each day she held her envelope, imagined her work being appreciated, and gave thanks as if her breakthrough had already happened. What changed first wasn't her client list, it was her relationship with expectation. And once that changed, everything else followed. Orders began arriving through referrals. Clients began returning. Her work gained momentum not because the market changed, but because her mindset shifted into certainty. That's the hidden truth behind so many miracles. They don't arrive because we struggle harder. They arrive because we finally stop resisting ease. Matilda didn't manifest through striving, she manifested through release. And that's the subtle art. To bless before you see results. Not because you're trying to manipulate the universe, but because you've already aligned with its rhythm. When you affirm your abundance daily, even in silence, even while things still look the same, you're planting seeds in unseen soil, and those roots grow deeper with each sincere word of gratitude. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because what you bless expands, and the way you treat small blessings directly determines how quickly the larger ones arrive. Write in the comments, I bless what I have. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because here lies one of the most misunderstood secrets behind manifestation. The way you speak about your life is the way you sculpt it. Every casual comment, every complaint dressed as humor, every time you say, I can't afford that, or things never go my way, you're not just describing your experience. You're authoring it. You're putting ink to the page of your own story, and the law doesn't filter sarcasm from sincerity. It simply obeys the script you repeat. There's a hidden truth behind why affirming provision is more than just a mindset tool. It's a spiritual discipline. When you speak of lack, even if it feels justified, you solidify the illusion of separation. You reinforce a false image that there's not enough, But when you declare abundance, not to convince yourself, but because you recognize the deeper reality, you realign with divine flow. You begin to see that provision isn't about the balance in your account, but the belief in your heart. That shift in narrative, even before the outer reflects it, is where the real transformation begins. And the most powerful way to demonstrate this inner conviction? Give. Not recklessly, not performatively, but with quiet certainty that what you release returns magnified. Giving, even when it stretches you slightly, is a sacred act of trust. You're not losing, you're circulating. It's not about the amount, it's about the energy behind it. A coin dropped with love holds more power than a check signed with fear. Because in that moment, you're proving something to yourself. I'm not bound by appearances. I live by higher law. The behind-the-scenes mechanics of the universe don't reward withholding. They respond to faith in motion. When you give, you're not just helping someone else. You're affirming your own identity as someone who has, and that identity becomes magnetic. Suddenly, opportunities feel drawn to you. Resources appear without strain, not because you manipulated the system, but because you harmonized with its rhythm. So when your mind wants to focus on what's missing, choose instead to speak only of what's present, of what's flowing, multiplying, returning. Talk about the doors opening, the clients showing up, the peace that's already here. Speak of provision like it's your native language. That's when the external catches up with the internal, and not a moment before. Write in the comments, I choose to speak abundance. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because here's where transformation often begins in the most unexpected way, through how you see others when they're not in the room. It's easy to pray for our dreams, affirm for abundance, and visualize healing when it's about us. But when emotions get tangled in relationships, when people hurt us, disappoint us, or simply don't behave the way we expected, our spiritual discipline is put to the test. And yet, the most overlooked key to inner freedom might be this: blessing those we struggle to love. What if every judgment, every mental complaint, every emotional sting could become a doorway to power? Not through control, but through release? When you silently bless someone, especially someone you're at odds with, you're not pretending nothing happened. You're rising above the pattern. You're stepping out of the reactive loop and choosing to be a creator of peace instead of a consumer of conflict. The hidden truth is, energy doesn't lie. What you project sticks to you first. And when you begin to intentionally project peace, even when it costs your pride, you start to feel lighter, stronger, clearer. Carlos had every reason to walk away from his business partner Eduardo. The betrayal was real, the trust was gone, and every meeting between them was soaked in tension. But Carlos did something radical. Each night, instead of rehashing the story, he visualized Eduardo calm, successful, smiling. He silently said, I bless you with clarity. I release you to your highest good. And in less than 2 weeks, something shifted. Eduardo reached out, not with more drama but with softness, vulnerability. The two men reconciled, not because someone won the argument, but because the energy between them had changed, not with force, but with silent alignment. This isn't just a technique for others. It's a technique for you, because the bitterness you hold towards someone becomes a weight around your own heart. When you bless someone, you're not setting them free. You're setting yourself free from the version of you that was still stuck in that wound. And from that space, your decisions shift. Your mindset clears. Your next steps become easier. You no longer feel pulled in a dozen emotional directions because you've chosen peace internally. And peace has a way of creating order everywhere else. Put down in the comments, I choose to bless, not blame. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic because at this point in the journey, something begins to shift. Not just in your thoughts, not just in your emotions, but in your identity. We've talked about healing, abundance, peace in relationships, but what happens when you realize the common thread behind it all is you? Not the limited, worn-out version you've been taught to manage and repair, but the real you, the one that never needed fixing. That's the moment when forgiveness takes on an entirely new dimension. It's no longer about being noble or spiritually polite. It becomes about liberation. Forgiveness is the quiet revolution of the mind. It's not forgetting, excusing, or pretending. It's a sacred decision to stop bleeding from wounds long closed. It's refusing to relive past stories and call it reflection. When you choose to forgive, not with grand gestures, but in the silence of your heart, you're breaking invisible contracts with pain. You're no longer agreeing to carry someone else's mistake in your nervous system. You're reclaiming your mental real estate, and that space, once cleared of resentment, becomes the fertile ground where peace grows roots. But here's the hidden truth many never uncover. Real forgiveness is inseparable from identity, because the moment you stop seeing yourself as the one who was hurt and start seeing yourself as the one who is free, you meet the Christ within. Not a historical figure trapped in stained glass, but the living, radiant essence planted in you since before your first breath. The Christ within is not a doctrine. It's not a belief. It's a vibration, a memory of wholeness trying to make its way back to the surface through your awareness. So when you look in the mirror and you say, "Christ in me is my true self," you're not being poetic. You're activating the part of you that knows no fear, no limitation, no failure. You're speaking directly to the source of your own transformation. It's the part of you that doesn't flinch in the face of obstacles because it knows the obstacle is the illusion, not your strength, not your path, not your light. You begin to walk differently, not because you've learned a new tactic, but because you've remembered a deeper truth, a divine truth that was never lost, just buried under years of noise, fear, and small thinking. Write in the comments, "I walk in the light of who I truly am." If you're still here with me, it means something in today's message resonated deeper than words, and I'm truly glad we could share this space together. If you found clarity, comfort, or even just a new way of seeing things, consider subscribing so we can keep unfolding these ideas side by side. Drop a comment saying, "I'm with you until the end." I'd love to know who's walking this journey with me. And if this content lit even a small spark in you, a like lets me know we're connected in this exploration. There's a video right here that complements everything we've uncovered today. Click and continue with me over there. Let's keep going.